Welcome to Streaming with Two Dudes, a podcast about all things streaming. Each episode, we break down some of the best series, songs, movies, and shows. I'm one dude, Parker.
I'm dude number 2, Jeff.
And dudes, this episode, we're talking about Cobra Kai, Season 5, Episode 1. But first, Jeff, what else have you been streaming?
Dude, nothing at all. It's
Busy
been a
week for the old Jeff, man.
Crazy week at work. I'm sure I've mentioned briefly on previous podcasts. I've added Grandpa, also known as Gramps, for my family to my resume here in the last couple of months. So just totally embracing that, eating that up.
Happy Jeff.
So yeah, no other streaming has taken place, but I had enough enthusiasm and just was pumped so much for Cobra Kai that I didn't even really want to stream anything else. How about you? How about yourself?
I'm actually going to talk about an audiobook that I've been streaming. I listened to I'm Glad My Mother Died by Jennette McCurdy. I was talking about how I was an iCarly fan. She was the actress that played Sam, and she also played in Sam and Cat. She goes into her life and her relationship between her mother and the way that her mother kind of pushed her into being an actress at a young age, and a lot of the hardships that she went through dealing with that. And I'm not going to spoil too much of it, but if you have any relationship to that show or her as an actress or autobiographies in general, I definitely recommend it. It's very funny, extremely heartbreaking at times, and really eye-opening to how children are treated in the industry and the differences that a parent can make being in that situation.
So I'm old school and I still use Yahoo as my homepage, but I know for probably a good solid 2 weeks straight, every time I was on there, there was a separate mention of her book in a different, I guess, caption or different topic and subject. And so, of course, I read it every time because went through a spell where I watched iCarly with my son and other young kids. So I was definitely interested. And yeah, everything I read seemed like, wow, that's really cool that you listened to it. I might have to take a listen or a read myself.
So we finally got to watch, after 9 months, got to see Season 5, Episode 1. Jeff, what did you think? We're going to take a moment to talk about 3 different points. These are just 3 points that we found interesting about each episode, and we're just going to kind of move through those. And I am going to let Jeff go first.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. And I'm glad you let me go first because I feel like this is a good lead-in question, and it actually doesn't specifically pertain to anything that happened in the first season, or I'm sorry, the first episode of Season 5. But for everybody that's listening, Parker, set up the scene of you viewing the first episode of Season 5. Like, what was your day like? What did you do to prepare? Describe the scene and how it went down.
I made sure that I wouldn't be disturbed. I turned off my phone, turned off the lights, lit a few candles, stretched, practiced karate, meditated, and push play.
What kind of candles?
They were tea candles.
Tea candles. I meant like what scent, not what. It was a tumbler. It was a jar. I'm sorry. What scent of candle was setting the mood for this first viewing?
Cucumber melon.
Okay, that's a solid choice, I guess. But I'm going to set up my scene. Of course, I've been psyched all week. Even like I said, it's been just a crazy week at work. But I kept reminding myself, man, Friday is happening. And you actually mentioned an interesting point earlier that 9 months. It came out a lot earlier this year, so we didn't have to wait as long. Normally, it's been dropping right around New Year's the last couple of years. So they kind of gave us a little early Christmas present.
Yeah, so, I was thinking about it today. I was like, man, this is 9 months.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So yeah, I was psyched. Got home from work, had to take care of some other things. So it was probably more towards 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. Wife's already in bed. So I get out my Karate Kid shirt. I get me a big bowl of popcorn, get me a little Mike's Hard Lemonade. And normally, I don't know how you do it, Parker, but for some reason, I just end up watching almost everything on my phone. Not sure why. It's just out of habit. Usually my wife goes to bed. I don't like watching stuff on TV because I'm not sure if the sound's bothering her. So I normally just stick on my headphones and watch stuff on my phone. But, I was like, you know what, this time I'm breaking out laptop, still use my headphones. And I'm like, I'm going to do it upright. And of course, I've been super excited and hyped about all kinds of new seasons or movies coming out, but this one was special. And I'm sure it's because obviously this is the first one in which we were doing a podcast about it.
Mhm.
And although this is our fourth podcast, Cobra Kai will always hold a special place with us because obviously we know this is the reason we did a podcast.
Right.
Not because we just want to do one about Cobra Kai, but it's because this was the first one that we were really having a lot of in-depth conversations about. And we've shared briefly before, but it's like, hey, why don't we talk about this where other people can hear it?
Mhm.
So just a great experience. The only bad experience was the episode ended, and I'm like, there's no way that was a full episode. I felt like it was like 10 minutes.
It did. It was over really
So,
quick.
so yeah, this is going to be difficult for us watching one or two episodes at a time. We obviously would normally just binge watch all 10 episodes because it's a pretty quick watch. Just wanted to share what the scene was like for both of us on seeing that very first episode of season 5.
My number 3, I'm gonna talk about Sam. We didn't see her too much this episode, but we did see a scene with her rewatching her fight with Tori on YouTube. That little scene there, just wanted to touch real quick. It makes you wonder if Tori will be replaying that. Or maybe she's doing the same thing, and maybe that's when she'll realize that, the bribe did a little bit more than what she thought. But she also got a phone call from Miguel, who was in Mexico, and they had a little bit of an argument because she made the conversation about her. Now, I wanted to ask you, do you think she's justified in that situation, or do you think Miguel is right in complaining that Sam always makes everything about her?
Very quickly, I'll touch on your comment about you wondering if Tori's doing the same thing. I'm going to say no, because I think they both had a different experience coming out of that fight.
Mhm.
Obviously, with Tori losing, and I'm sorry, with Sam losing and feeling responsible for everything that happened after that because of the deal that was on the table.
Mhm.
Whereas with Tori, she obviously won. She knows about the bribe, so I don't know if she'll be going back really studying that particular fight. Not because she doesn't care. I just think their experiences are different. But it'll still be interesting to see if Tori gives any thought to that fight whatsoever. I'm glad you brought up the argument. I did find that a little humorous because, I mean, we've both been in relationships over the years,
Mhm.
and that's a common argument that usually breaks out when both people are going through something and they're wanting their partner or their significant other, in their corner.
Mhm.
And it's going to cause conflict when both parties are going through something tough at the same time, because you're more interested in getting their support and their feedback than supplying it.
Correct.
I will side a little bit with Miguel on this one for the simple fact his issue is trying to find a biological father that he's never met in 17 years.
Mhm.
And kind of like what he said, this is more important than karate. I mean, I can see why they're both upset, because obviously Miguel knew how important that fight was between her and Tori. And I actually forgot that he left before, and
Mhm.
I didn't, slip my mind that he didn't even know the outcome.
Right.
So see, I can see why she's upset, but yeah, in the end, I mean, Miguel's challenge in life is a little bit more, I would say, important. What do you think?
See, I'm gonna have to disagree with you there. I'm actually siding with Sam on this one. He left without watching her fight. He finally does call her. She worries about him. She finds out all the information, and he doesn't even ask about anything. And so I understand where she's coming from as well, because he it wasn't like that was the first thing that she asked, when he picked up the phone. Was She wasn't like, "Miguel, where were you at? You didn't watch me fight." She was worried about him. She put him first in that situation. And I think she was valid in trying to, bring up the fact that he didn't even seem to care at all.
I mean, it's okay for you to be wrong. I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, actually,
We'll put a poll up.
I do need to say something. Miguel, if you're listening,
Miguel, the character.
bro, Call your mama first. That's all I gotta say about that.
I will agree. He
Call your mama first.
yeah, I will agree. He did mess up not calling mama first. So I will go into my number 2, which is Johnny and Robbie being in Mexico. I really love this. I love them being in Mexico. It was really nice seeing them bond and having moments. It was also probably, every scene that or the scenes that they were in were probably the only ones that really had any comedic value to them. We find out that, 60 minutos are 300 American minutes.
That was so good.
I did want to talk about Johnny and his growth that he has shown, him taking responsibility for his actions and passing that, knowledge on to Robbie. I think that was a really special moment for both their relationship and for his character, showing how far he has come. Instead of just ignoring the problem and running away from it, he has not only decided to confront it head on, he's passing that knowledge on to his son to keep him from following in his footsteps, and he's doing a really good job at it. Whereas before he wasn't fulfilling that as well. The last thing I want to talk about, as far as them being in Mexico, is their fight and Robbie deciding to stay. It was really nice getting to see a fight, this early on, and seeing Robbie taking Johnny's back, standing up for him. And it was really nice watching them team up, because I don't think we've actually even seen them team up before, have we? This is the first time we've seen them team up, right?
Yeah, it's definitely the first time.
Yeah. It was probably the first time my adrenaline really got going that episode. I loved it.
So as soon as Johnny and Robbie get there, and he makes the comment to Robbie, "Hey, I'm gonna go over here to these surfer dudes."
Mhm.
Did you immediately smile because you pretty much knew what was coming?
Oh yeah, I knew exactly what was coming. What about you? What's your number 2?
So I'm actually going to piggyback on your number 2 with what originally was going to be my number 1, just because
Okay.
they're pretty similar. Of course, as everybody that listens to the podcast know, we like to go deep sometimes and expand beyond the show into real life situations.
Real deep.
That's right. So I wanted you to speak more. I will as well. Speak on the whole idea of father son bonding, how it's portrayed in this first episode, as well as speak on your own personal experience with father son bonding. Bam! That's how we go deep here.
First, I will talk about the characters and how they're portrayed in the show. I think it shows, in this episode, that it's important to have that father figure in your relation and in your life, as far as anybody goes. Like they're wanting to do that. I don't think Miguel was so much worried about his own father until he had that moment with Johnny, where he called him Robbie. I think that led him on a path to think, that his relationship with his biological father is more important than just a father figure in general. The relationship with Robbie and Johnny is important to Robbie because Robbie, he has his father there and his father's trying. So it's nice to see that eventually both father and son, I don't have a father experience, so I'm mostly speaking from a son experience on this level. I think it's important for the son to have that to look up to, and to know how it's important to be a man in society, and how, you're supposed to handle yourself, carry yourself, and what's expected of you. And as far as me personally, my relationship with my father has definitely been a big influence on my life, especially during my development stage. When I was probably that age, I probably didn't think that he had much impact on me, probably even rebelled against some of it. But sitting where I'm at now in my life as somewhat mature adult male, I can look back and see a lot of him in the actions and the decisions that I make in my day-to-day life.
Yeah, I was really happy to see episode 1 really focus on Robbie and Johnny, just because of the way last season ended. And we spoke briefly on how that last scene, and I think we both agreed, was probably one of the most touching scenes throughout the entire series so
Yeah.
far. And I don't know about you, but I'm not sure why. When you see it play out on screen, there's something that hits different when it's between a father and son.
Mhm.
And I've got a great relationship with my dad and my mom, so there's no like personal background or history for me on why that might be. I don't know if it's because men in general aren't great in expressing feelings
Mhm.
and communicating exactly everything they're dealing with. So when I see it play out on on the screen
Mhm.
or in real life, but for this purpose on the screen, it hits different, and it's so touching. And I was so glad that they started off the season really focusing on Robbie and Johnny, and to see them bond. And like you mentioned, dude, Johnny is just making so many strides. I'm really glad he started season 5 off this way because he still got his extremely out of touch with society humor with some of the gifts he bought at the store in Mexico.
Mhm.
Um, and you could tell, and you kind of hinted at it, and for some reason, I forget of what Robbie might be feeling because of what he did to Miguel.
Yeah.
He brought up, I know you probably got some regrets when it comes to Miguel, and I was like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I forgot he almost killed him. That's got to weigh heavy on him because I
Yeah.
guess it's Miguel's healed. You almost kind of forget that he had a near death experience. So Johnny recognizing that and making it intentional and acting with purpose to say, I want to prepare you and heal you from that because of what I've experienced.
Yeah.
So all of their bonding was just great. I was glad to see it happen. And then you see Miguel and Hector. It's really cool that you saw both sets. Of course, Miguel and Hector is a little bit different because we don't know exactly what's happening there. Well, I'll get into that more because that's one of my other topics. But as far as me personally, yeah, it was really cool. Anytime I see stuff like that, it kind of forces me to look back on growing up and some of me and my dad's bonding experiences. A lot of our bonding was over sports.
Mhm.
I was real big into like baseball, basketball, and all that kind of stuff, but baseball more in particular. And you've probably experienced this to a degree as well. So my dad was heavily involved with me in baseball, and he even coached a number of my teams. And of course, I loved it, thought it was great. He was a great coach. He wasn't one of those that really put a lot of pressure on me and really got on me for not succeeding or whatever. I mean, I was a pretty good player, so but I never felt that pressure from him. It was just all about, hey, go and have fun and and play hard, try hard, that kind of stuff. And I guess during the time you didn't think much of it. You just thought that's just the way it's supposed to be. But then as you get older, you realize now there's a lot of dads not like that.
Mhm.
But then as I got older, and even when I became a parent, I was like, wow, that took a lot of time and sacrifice
Yeah.
for him to work a full-time job and then being involved in my life and in my hobbies and my sports. Obviously, as you know, when you get to that stage in your own life, you realize the sacrifice and the time that it takes to really invest in your kid, where you
Right.
don't really appreciate it as much when you are a kid in that stage. So it definitely gives you perspective, and I love seeing a lot of these father son moments build out on this show. It's very touching, and I'm sure we'll eventually see some play out with Daniel and one of your favorite characters, Anthony, on the show.
All right. Well, you said it kind of goes into your last topic. So go ahead and share with us what I guess what would have been your number two, but your last topic. What's that? What's going on there?
It's one main topic, but there's a lot of subtopics that fall under. I mean, obviously, episode 1 focused a lot of Miguel being in Mexico.
Mhm.
So speak on that, on what we saw and how you think it might play out.
I'm gonna let you speak on this because it's your topic.
Okay,
Yeah. So
good,
you go
because
on, and I'll hit up anything that you don't have because this is not one of my points. So this is your talking point, big
good.
fella. It's
I'm
all
glad
you.
I'm glad you let me go first on this.
Yeah, I don't have, this is not my topic, so I probably have very little to add.
All right, so there's so much unknown here. They haven't spent a lot of time talking about Miguel's dad throughout the entire series. So this is obviously the most we're hearing or seeing. So there's so many questions. So like the second Hector that he comes across and ends up hanging out with and having dinner with this guy, his wife and their child. So is his dad really a bad guy? Was Miguel misled by his mom for whatever reason? Or was his dad evil at one point and did he change? Because he's the second Hector is portrayed as a great guy, almost like he's beloved by the community. Had that little scene like at the back of a building where, one of the guys says, man, you're just too nice doing stuff like that. But here's something I thought about like probably hours after I watched the show. Or was the first Hector really his dad? And the second Hector just portrayed the dad that he won't or wish he had. And maybe the first one is his real dad all along. To me, it can go. But what I'm a little confused about, and we talked briefly about this on our last podcast, is how much of season 5 is going to involve Miguel, his dad, Johnny and Robbie being in Mexico. We both initially didn't disagree. One of my theories was that it was going to take up a good bit of season 5 just because that's such a heavy topic. And that I would probably be disappointed if they wrapped it up in like 1 or 2 episodes. But then we both agreed after watching the trailer that okay. They're in the All Valley for most of the trailer, so there's a good chance this will be wrapped up, and obviously we know it's going to take at least 2 episodes.
Yeah,
but I'm trying to figure out what happens from here. So if this second Hector is his dad and he doesn't spend a lot of time in Mexico, is it like, oh cool, well I'm your son, but I need to go back to the All Valley and take care of some stuff. Maybe I'll get up with you later, or I'm just curious how it's supposed to play out from here.
yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I guess just so I can have something to talk about here. This is actually my honorable mention is Hector number 2. I'll go ahead and jump into that real quick. We'll move this ahead of my number 1 real quick. I think that is his dad. He's probably a snake in the grass. I think that's probably what we're going to learn about him. Either that or we find out that he has turned his life around, and maybe it just kind of both shows Miguel that, people can change, and maybe, who knows? I don't know where we're going with his character. But I do think that was what was my honorable mention, was bringing him up and talking about his potentials on what the mom described versus what we see. So we'll go ahead and jump into my number 1, which is Daniel and Chosen and their plan for what they're doing. We find out that Daniel is actually closing down Miyagi-Do just like he promised. It doesn't seem like at this stage that they are going to, find some loophole to train the Miyagi-Do students. So we were wrong about our theories on that all around, which was totally shocking. I felt like that was one of the theories that we were solid on. And we were pretty much like, yeah, they're going to definitely train the students some way.
Well, it's only episode 1 as well. So.
It is, but I mean, Daniel seems very adamant. I believe with him and what we've seen that it could happen, but it's not going to happen. Right now, it doesn't seem like either Johnny or Daniel are going to go against their word with training the Miyagi-Do students. I definitely expected some kind of plan, but Daniel is definitely sticking to keeping it closed at this point, which was not what I expected whatsoever.
So, real quick, not to add another question, but it goes along with what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think him closing the dojo was the plan all along, or did the argument with Amanda sway that at all?
I think he had it planned all along. I think he knows Silver well enough to not go against that. Before even he has his conversation with Amanda, I think he already knows that the children are in danger. He doesn't need Amanda to tell him that. I think he had some plan that just involved him and Chosen and potentially Johnny, because he mentions, without Johnny being there, it's just between him and Chosen to do something. So I think from the get-go, I think he definitely was planning on keeping the dojo closed, because I think that he is genuinely concerned about the welfare of not only the kids in the dojo, but Sam and his own kids, Anthony as well. We also find out that Kim Sun-young is real. Really, the reason I want to mention him more than anything is just a shout out to the writing for this show, because with where we're at in film and television, we see a lot of reboots and remakes, and a lot of it is just a lot of sloppy writing, it seems like, to make things kind of fit sometimes. That's one of the reasons I don't really like movies in the Jurassic Park franchise, and several others as well, Star Wars. Some of these things, the way that the writing goes is just kind of sloppy, but that's another podcast for another day. But just praises for them, because they take a name that was thrown away, and they've done so well with making it in just a quick little dialogue about how Mr. Miyagi never mentioned Kim Sun-young and why it made sense, because if Miyagi left before World War II, Kim Son-young was during the Korean War, which is where he trained Chosen and Kreese. Like it all makes sense. And that's why Chosen knows of him, because Chosen was still in Okinawa. Like all of that for just one throwaway line, instead of, the way that they've built upon this franchise in general is just really well done. And
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was actually one of the notes I wrote, because it was either you or me. I think it might have been me, where I specifically asked the question, did Mr. Miyagi know about Kim Sun-young? I was like, I need to go back and watch Karate Kid 3, because surely he knew about him. And it's almost like they heard us.
Right.
Because like you said, they specifically addressed it. And I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like they've done a really good job of tying up loose ends and making things make sense. And, even just small questions like that, they answer and they make it make sense. They don't just it's really well written.
Would you agree that it seems like the writers have found a way that it's almost like they've been able to build upon the movies as if their show was meant all along?
Right.
It's like
that's what I'm saying, is like their world building is just great, because it's not like we're seeing a show that was written because of Cobra Kai or because of the Karate Kid. It's like we're actually watching a show where the world is picked up. Like it's like the world, we're actually watching a show where it would be picked up from. It's not. It doesn't seem too far fetched, even though we're watching, sparring karate dojos.
Yeah.
It still doesn't seem too far fetched.
Well, here's a question: Has this been done before, where a series launched based off a movie or a franchise movie, and the series that launches several years later uses the same actors, characters, the whole bit? I know there's been shows launched based on movies before, but has it been done in this way before?
I think Fuller House attempted it. That's probably the first one that I can really think of that was, but I mean, that one didn't have movies. That was a reboot of a show rebooting a show. I mean, I'm sure it's been done.
To our listeners out there,
I know. I do know that. I will. Okay, so I will say, I think Marvel does a lot of that. Marvel's doing a lot of that in their universe, where with Disney Plus, with like the Loki series, and they also do that in the Star Wars universe as well. So Disney's doing a lot of that right now, the live action, which I mean, we've seen in animation plenty of times. Like that was probably my whole childhood was, cartoons based off of movies. But as far as live action goes, I think Cobra Kai is probably perfected it, at least. The last thing I want to talk about with Chosen and Daniel, which is also basically the last scene, if it's not the last scene, is we see that Chosen has joined Cobra Kai.
Why didn't I see that coming?
I don't know.
I didn't
see it coming. And honestly, I didn't even see it. I didn't even expect it as Silver was walking down and having his speech. I did not expect it all the way up until the very end, when he gets to the very last person and we see somebody from the back. I was like, it's Chosen. And it took me that long for it to click.
I'm about to make you feel better. It didn't click with me until they showed his face. I was too busy looking at the names on the back of the different gis to see if I could pick up on something. So even when they got to the back of the last one, which of course looks like Chosen from the back, but
yeah,
I was so focused on other stuff that it didn't hit me until they actually showed his face. I'm like, holy crap, this just got interesting.
Well, see, okay, so that was exactly what I was doing, and that was my thought process. Was I was watching the back of the gis, and then when we got to Chosen, I noticed that they didn't show the name, and so I was like, why are they focusing? And that was literally like, I was like, why are they focusing so hard on his back, but they're not showing us what his name is on his gi? And that was literally like, I had the thought, and the immediate like afterthought was Chosen. And then it showed his face, and I was like, especially when he said, "Hey," I was like, oh my gosh, Chosen. Man, I'm so excited for this. I'm so ready for episode 2. I talked about my honorable mention being Hector. What is your honorable mention?
Go a different route. I'm going to throw out just a few different like quotes that were thrown out there.
All right.
That I just picked up on. You may have as well. That I just thought the quote was either telling or it was just a cool quote. So the first one, and this one kind of speaks to some of the theories we were talking about last podcast, as far as some of the different relationships. Will they continue? But when Robbie and Johnny are together, driving towards, or looking for Miguel, I think it was shortly after Robbie realized why he was there with Johnny, which was to help find Miguel. And he kind of makes a comment, man, I could be at home with Tori right now.
Yeah.
And of course, that stood out because we had wondered, all right, are they officially done now? Because obviously Tori's still in Cobra Kai. Robbie's got issues with Cobra Kai now. So what does that do? Obviously, there's still feelings there, but I guess we won't know how it plays out until they get back to the All Valley.
I think I had spoken on their relationships being that, we'll just kind of see them being a couple, and it probably we won't spend much time on, them forming or any kind of drama between them. And I think that little throwaway line just kind of confirms that. We'll probably just see them together, and I don't think there any conflict that involves Robbie and Tori is just going to be about her leaving Cobra Kai, and I don't think it's actually going to involve their relationship. I think they're pretty much going to be a done deal as far as this season.
Yeah. The other quote that I thought was pretty neat that kind of stood out to me was I'll call him Hector number 2 when he looked at Miguel and said, maybe you're a stranger, but tonight you're family. And I thought, wow, how crazy is that? If he truly is Miguel's dad, we still don't know if he is, but obviously Miguel's thinking that this guy's his dad. And this guy has no clue that, okay, this kid's my son. And just the way that sentence played out, maybe you're a stranger, but tonight you're family. And I thought that was cool the way they threw that in there. And actually, you stole my last quote that I wrote down, which was now I can't even remember it right. The other quote was when Johnny mentioned 60 mementos equally. That's like 300 American minutes. I actually had to write that one down. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I love that quote. I wrote that one down as well. I was like, I got to remember that one.
Yeah, that was my honorable mention. And another thing we're going to start doing is a dude of the week. Of course, we'll have 2 of these possibly each week. So, Parker, can I try to guess who your dude of the week is?
All right. Well, I kind of have a curveball here. Let's see if you can guess it. I have a dud of the week. Let's see if you can guess mine.
Dud of the week. Okay. Well, the dude of the week I was going to guess that I thought you were going to pick was going to be Johnny. Obviously, I don't think he'll qualify as your dud of the week. Nope. So the dud is a character, right?
The dud is a character.
Man, that's a good question. Your dud of the week is Amanda.
Wah, wah, wah. Never.
I should have known better.
My dud of the week is the Australian surfing con man. And I wanted to point him out specifically because, number 1, what a piece of shit. Number 2, we have the same swim trunks.
No way.
Yeah. Hang on. Let me show you. I know this is not a visual medium, but I'm going to show you. I mean, well, I guess, never mind. I guess it doesn't matter because you'd have to see a picture of the guy anyways. But yes, I have the same swim trunks as the Australian surfing con man. I noticed that during the fighting scene. I was like, what? So I'm going to guess your dude of the week. Is your dude of the week a character as well?
It is.
All right. Your dude of the week is Daniel.
I approached this 2 different ways. When I knew we were going to add this to the segment, the first person that popped in my head, I was like, no, Parker will probably pick that one. So I'm going to pick this other one who I think is a strong candidate for me personally. Originally, I was leaning towards Johnny. Just because I just thought he was awesome in that first episode, not just his continued humor, but just the way his character developed. He was just awesome with Robbie. And one thing I meant to point out earlier is one of the areas you can tell he changed is when he could tell Robbie was kind of ticked off why he was there. Normally Johnny and most parents in that situation would have really got irritated and just kind of lashed out. But Johnny took the opposite approach and was like, you know what, here, I totally understand. I'm getting you a bus ticket. That way you can go back home. You can go be with Tori, whatever. But anyway, you can edit that out if you want.
I did not.
Mine's actually a dudette of the week.
All right.
And I had to bite my tongue earlier because this came up earlier, but I'm going with Sam.
All right.
And obviously, the first 4 seasons, we gave a lot of love to Tori, a lot of love to Hawk/Eli, and maybe just a little bit of love for Amanda. And we kind of came down on Sam some, but I'll be honest with you, she was probably one of my first favorite characters, and I've always liked her. And the way she was portrayed in this first episode, man, you could tell she has that fierceness. Like you said, she was going back watching that fight over and over. And she took that loss personal, and she took responsibility for the dojo having to close, And I love that about her, that it meant that much to her, and she's taking it so personal. And for the first time, I saw her being just like her mom. We've talked about how her mom is just fierce, driven, motivated, kind of the full package. And I felt like we saw a lot of that in Sam in that first episode. So she's my dudette of the week. I had to bite my tongue because you kind of gave her a little bit of love, taking her side in the argument with Miguel.
Yep.
And even though I didn't take her side in the argument, I got to give her props. She's my dudette of the week.
All right. Well, that is our first episode of season 5. Thank you, everybody, for joining us so much. We will be back this week. We're going to actually start putting out 2 episodes while we cover Cobra Kai. Next episode, we will be covering episodes 2 and 3 of Cobra Kai. So if you are watching along with us, you can go ahead and watch the next 2 episodes. We will be covering those in our next podcast, which will be released later this week.
And a big shout out to Mr. Parker himself. We've had to cover a lot the last 2 or 3 podcasts, and this man has did some major editing behind the scenes. Of course, I don't see all the work. You just hear the finished product. I know he's happy that, and I'm happy too, that we're now confining our podcast to just 1 or 2 episodes. It'll make his life easier. It makes my life a little bit easier, but yeah, props to him for sure.
In the future, we're going to be planning on doing movies. So any recommendations you have in that area? We have a horror theme planned for October. So if you have any horror movies that are something that you can find on a streaming service that you'd like to recommend for the month, please send those in and we will discuss and see if we can get working on those. Jeff, do you have anything else you would like to say before we head out and get caught up on episodes 2 and 3?
No. This has been a blast. I know Parker can relate as well, but man, I was so pumped to do this podcast. This is the first one we've done in which we weren't talking about seasons that have been aired several months or a few years prior. So we felt like everybody's kind of on the same page now. Everybody was pumped for the same episode. So, man, it was so much fun watching. Please pray for Parker and I. We want so bad just to watch the entire season, but we know it kind of compromises the discussion and conversation when you're trying to talk about one particular episode, but you already know everything that's happened. So we want our thoughts and feelings to be genuine and on the spot. So we're taking this for you guys. So we thank you for your support, and we're trying really hard to just do 1 or 2 episodes at a time.
Good stuff. Thanks to my co-host Jeff, and thank you so much for listening. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Giving 5 stars really does help these dudes out. If you have a thought or idea about what we're watching, please email us at streamingwith2dudes@gmail.com. Links to our Patreon and socials are in the show notes. Thanks again, and remember, if it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's probably a turtle.